This week in Argentina, drama dancing through the sky.
So this week, we're really digging into President Milei's big national address. You know, this was supposed to be the speech that calmed a very nervous nation, but instead, it kind of did the opposite. It actually managed to unite journalists from all across the political spectrum in their criticism. This quote from journalist Ernesto Tenenbaum just nails it. He said, "It failed to calm investors, and it failed to calm the people." That really is the core conflict here, right? The speech had two main audiences it needed to convince: the financial markets and the general public. And from what pretty much everyone is saying, it missed the mark with both of them. So you have to ask, why this speech and why right now? Well, it definitely didn't happen in a vacuum. It was delivered right in the shadow of a pretty stinging electoral defeat for his party. And on top of that, there was what people were calling a growing hysteria in the financial markets. We're talking country risk soaring and the dollar under some serious pressure. And the very first thing everyone watching noticed was the tone was completely different. The aggressive, off-the-cuff, fiery Milei that everyone's used to, he was gone. In his place, we got this very subdued president reading very soberly from a teleprompter. He even left out his classic "Viva la libertad, carajo" at the end. For a lot of journalists, this wasn't just a style change, they were calling it a capitulation. Okay, let's get into the real meat of the speech, which was all about the 2026 budget. Now, the president didn't just frame this as a bunch of numbers. He presented it as the absolute, unwavering cornerstone of his entire economic plan. He basically staked his entire credibility on this one idea of fiscal balance. But of course, as soon as he said that, the critics immediately jumped in with a huge question. Are the numbers holding this cornerstone up actually based in reality? And this is where the whole plan really started to look shaky to a lot of analysts. You have people like Alejandro Berkovich pointing out that the budget's projections just seem totally disconnected from the real world. I mean, an inflation forecast of 7 to 12% seemed optimistic to many, but the part they found truly unbelievable was the dollar projection.
Think about this for a second. The entire budget is built on a forecast that the dollar, on average in 2026, will be worth less than it is right now. Economist Alejandro Vanoli did not pull any punches. He called this a mockery and basically said no one in their right mind would believe it.
All right, so moving on from the technical numbers for investors, the speech also tried to send a message of hope to a public that's just exhausted. And it did this by making a very, very bold claim about where their daily lives are headed. That was the key takeaway for the people, a direct promise that the hardest part of the economic adjustment was behind them. But for so many of the journalists listening, that statement was just completely at odds with the facts they see on the ground every day. And journalist Antonio Llorente's response here was so blunt, and it really captured what a lot of people were feeling. He argued that for the average person, the pain isn't going away, it's actually getting worse. And when you look at the data, it's pretty hard to argue with that point of view. I mean, the data is pretty stark. Critics are pointing to this historic collapse in mass consumption. People just aren't spending. Then you've got the ongoing destruction of jobs in small and medium-sized industrial companies. And on top of it all, there are these really grim forecasts that poverty is climbing again. It's a tough picture.
So, if the budget numbers were seen as unbelievable and the social message totally missed the mark, what about the financial markets? I mean, they were a huge audience for this speech, so how did they react?
Well, the market's verdict was fast and it was harsh. The country risk, which is basically a measure of how risky it is to invest in Argentina, shot past 1,200 points. And as economist Carlos Melconian put it, that's not just a number, it's a huge problem. It essentially means Argentina is locked out of global credit markets.
You can really see that lack of confidence in this chart. The bar on the left, that's the government's official ceiling for the dollar exchange rate. But the next two bars show the futures market. That's what investors are actually betting the dollar will be worth in November and December. And they are consistently betting against the government, basically assuming a forced devaluation is coming.
And this kind of policy has absolutely staggering real-world consequences. Carlos Melconian also highlighted that between just April and July, this policy led to $16 billion in capital flight. Now, to put that number in perspective for you, that is more money leaving the country in 4 months than the entire massive Vaca Muerta energy project brings in from exports in a whole year.
So all of this really points to a huge disconnect, right? There's the official reality the government is presenting, and then there's the reality that the markets and all the analysts are seeing. Which, of course, brings us to the big question. Now, most analysts, they're expecting a significant but, controlled devaluation at some point after the October elections. But right in the middle of all that consensus, one maverick libertarian voice, a guy who was once a Milei supporter, made a prediction that just stunned everybody.
Financial analyst Carlos Maslatan. He basically argued that this isn't about what happens after the elections. He believes the government's policies have created a situation that is so unsustainable that it's about to explode now.
And he wasn't just predicting a small correction. He was forecasting a potential collapse. He sees an immediate jump to over 1,800 pesos. But then he says, that's just the start. His ultimate target? Over 3,000 pesos to the dollar. He says it's the only way the government can liquidate what he called its monumental internal debt.
His warning couldn't be more stark. They have no way to escape. It's impossible. And so that leaves us here, with a president presenting one vision of stability, while critics, markets, and even former allies are all seeing a massive storm gathering on the horizon. It leaves all of us wondering what the coming weeks are truly going to hold for Argentina.